You're listening to Daily Sip with Marcel, giving you morning moments of insight, laughter, and a little something to stir the soul.
Yeah. Welcome, sippers, and thank you for listening and watching Daily Sip with Marcel. And today is September 10th, 2025. And welcome to our special edition, Breakfast with Bob Bova. And let me introduce Bob Bova. How is California?
Actually, the weather's been wonderful, and it's been great. Like I said, we're on the beach this past weekend, and everything's been great. Had a wonderful Labor Day. Haven't spoken to you since then, and things have been going very, very well. As you know, there's a lot of turmoil and things going on in the Los Angeles area, which is very far north of me. But for the most part, it's been pretty great.
But we'll talk about that stuff just later. But first, I also want to let you know, Connecticut is as beautiful as ever. Over the Labor Day weekend, I went to the Woodstock Fair. Have you ever gone to the Woodstock Fair?
No, I have not, actually.
Well, it was fabulous. It's not a really big fair in many ways, but they had some really great entertainment. I only got to see one band, which was the best of Led Zeppelin, and they were a Led Zeppelin tribute band from Connecticut. They were from Connecticut, but they had different bands that were coming in and out all weekend, which was pretty exciting. I didn't get to see any of those. I did see some of the animals, and I got to see these motorcyclists run in a caged globe.
Yeah.
Back and forth. That was a lot of fun. And it was full of great vendors and lots of food. Lots of fair food, and it was packed. It was a beautiful day, gorgeous day. Connecticut was gorgeous all Labor Day weekend, and I got to see my mom, which was great.
Your mom, she's the best. Thank you. So, Connecticut's coming into what I consider its most beautiful time of the year. Connecticut between September and the end of November is just, that's what I remember growing up there. It was just the most beautiful time of the year. The weather was nice, crisp, and clean. It wasn't humid anymore. I just remember the falls being just spectacular.
And you could definitely tell that fall is coming. Fall is definitely coming. The trees are still green. There's a little bit. Some of the brush is starting to turn brown. Yeah, it's beautiful. It was in the 70s. It was really, really nice. And so that was great. Got to see my grandson, which was great, Noah. And he was doing great. My son and his lovely wife and my son's in-laws. It was a great weekend. We had a great time. So I also took a stroll down Davis Street. And around the block I had to go. Everything is the same.
That's great to hear.
And just had to do that because I was saying to friends of mine that I've got to just go back to the old neighborhood just to see, especially for my friend Bob. I had to just let him know what's going on. So that was good. So let me ask you, California, let's talk about what is happening there in the northern part of LA.
Well, I think that there's a lot of trepidation here. People, you see, we have so many of our vendors and friends and family that have folks that have been here for a long time. And, the introduction of the Marines and the National Guard really kind of threw people for an extended loop and trying to refine what the level is in terms of normalcy. We actually had a raid right up the street here, and it was really strange the amount of firepower and everything that they had right up the street here in our little quiet neighborhood in Irvine. It was very disconcerting. It really was something. And the person they were after wasn't even there. They had moved to New York months ago, and the poor parents, they were just scared to death. And it just seems like we are trying to crush a flea with a mallet, and I think it's really starting to put a lot of folks off. I think that there's genuine fear And I find that very difficult to in any way condone in our societies. I just hope that cooler heads prevail. I understand the job that needs to be done in terms of, people who are here illegally that are criminals and felons. And yes, I think we do need to let them go. But there's a lot of good people that have built really good lives here that are major parts of our community that need to continue to do that.
It's really scary knowing that you may have had a criminal up the street of yours.
Oh, no, was it? So what had happened was it was a college student who participated in one of the UCI Palestinian, events. And he had taken pictures of some of the ICE folks, and apparently he was a doxer, right? So he put up pictures of these potential people saying, hey, if you see these guys, run away. And they came after this young man with, everything they had. And like I said, he hadn't lived there for a while, and the neighbors were all just scared to death. And again, it wasn't that he was a criminal. It wasn't that he'd ever been convicted of anything. It wasn't that. It was just an amazing amount of force to talk to a former student. It concerned almost everybody in the neighborhood, saying, gosh, it just seems like it's overkill. I think that, there needs to be, and I believe this for a long time, there needs to be a much more concerted effort for a path to citizenship for people that have been in this country for a long time, that have done nothing but work hard, build businesses, part of their communities. They go to church. They're, that these folks need to be able to be unafraid to say, hey, look, we've done everything we can. Can you please give us a path to citizenship that's not going to take 30?
I got a question for you. So I understand about this young man. Do you think that he today, if that didn't happen, if none of that happened, but he still went and voiced his opinion and sided for the Palestinians and took photographs of these officers and made it public that they are telling them, if you see these guys, run the other way, whatever he said, okay, do you think he would stand up and take the oath to be a citizen in the United States?
Well, he is a citizen. That's just it. He is a citizen. He was born and raised here.
He's born and raised here.
Yeah, in Irvine. Yeah.
I thought you just said he was a doxer.
Doxxer. A doxer is someone who gets information on different types of people who are in law enforcement or government agencies, and they publish the information on who these people are and what they look like and what they do and where they're where they work from, so that if you do see them, that's what doxing is.
Don't you think that's illegal?
It is in some ways, yes, it is.
I think it is just illegal.
It is, but again,
if you were a police officer,
it's not a violent crime. When you've got armored cars and stuff rolling up and people surrounding with guns drawn and saying, "Come out with your hands up," to me, that's unnecessary. All they had to do was a couple of law enforcement agencies would go up to the door and knock on it and say, hey, is this young man here? Instead of, scaring the bejeebers out of everybody in the neighborhood and having all this stuff roll up and having a command center down in the community center for this young man. It was absurd. And I felt bad for the neighbors up, 2-3 streets up from here. It was at 6 a.m, right? Everyone's just absolutely losing their mind over this, wondering, my goodness, what is actually going on here? And then you come to find out they were looking for this young man who hadn't been there for a couple months, who was living in New York, and this is what he had done. And we're all just left shaking our heads, going, my goodness, what if this person really was a dangerous individual? Sure, I think that what he did, he needs to pay for it.
I think the real point to this is that they didn't have enough intelligence to know that this young man wasn't there. I think they should have been able to have enough intelligence beforehand. It didn't have to even get to that point I agree with you. It didn't have to get to that point. There should have been enough intelligence knowing why this young man was not there and where he is currently to prevent anything like this. I believe that with you, I believe that, number one, it was overkill for what they were trying to do.
Well, the escalation was absurd. The people, we live in one of the safest cities in the country. To have a stunt like this, again, overkill is just an understatement. And I am fully behind the effort to remove folks who are felons, unpleasant. I mean, if they're bad and they're here, get rid of them. I'm 100% behind that. But I find it very difficult to believe and get behind it. I don't believe in it, and I don't get behind it. You know, ICE folk, anybody who's in a mask, just rounding up people on the street, or rounding up people in Georgia, rounding those poor folks up in that battery plant in Georgia, 400 people, rounding up all these people, no due process, just rounding them up, just saying, hey, we're taking you out, without any kind of due process, without any kind of actual information about this is the person we're going after. They're just rounding up folks. And even yesterday, the Supreme Court basically gave the federal government the ability to continue to go into neighborhoods that they felt were dangerous, so that they can continue to round up people. Again, you know, what's that old saying? I didn't say anything when they came for so-and-so, and then they came for somebody else. I didn't say anything, then they finally came for me. And I think that we really need to have a systemic solution. And again, this is an offshoot of not having a systemic solution for people to become citizens properly, good people to become citizens. Again, we're trying to just put our arms around this huge problem and just round up a bunch of people and just pick out the ones that we don't want. It's just, it doesn't seem to be the correct response for what I believe we all were told and believed was going to be the exercise. And it's disconcerting. It's concerning. I think there is certainly, you know, Bill of Rights, constitutional rights that are being bent, and it's very, very concerning. You know, I don't think any of us should have to live in fear, and there's a lot of folks living in fear right now, and that's just not right. So,
yeah, people should not live in fear.
Right.
And I really feel, and I support your view on what you're having to say here, that we really need to have some real immigration reform, bigger than the immigration reform. Right now, and I agree with you, the bad actors should be gone. I agree with that.
Everyone agrees with that.
Yeah, and but also I think that there has to be a little bit more time put into really getting to know what the objective of the job is and making it more finite and more investigation going in, so that they're just not randomly doing stuff. Like, okay, the Hyundai plant you're talking about in Georgia. I mean, wait a second here. Something was not smelling right with that whole thing. Not 400 something people. There had to be something there that, and they apparently had been doing some investigation for months. Now, if that's true, and the information that they had, they should have also known why all those people were there and doing what they were doing. I mean, they could have had people, looking at that plant for months and investigating and doing their research and everything else, so that they knew going in what it was all about. If they didn't, shame on them. Again, that's right. But if there was something there, and that's 400 American jobs that could have been offered. Why weren't American jobs offered for those positions? What was the real reason behind that whole thing? And again, you and I don't have all the information, which is also disheartening, because the really should be behind this, and our press should be really investigating what really happened.
The Wall Street Journal today, front page Wall Street Journal, they delved into this. And a lot of those folks had H-1 visas. And the companies, the two Korean companies that ran that plant, basically said they couldn't get the folks here in the U.S. I mean, a majority of folks, I mean, there were some American folks working there, but the majority of the folks didn't have the technical skills that they needed for this battery plant in that area. So they brought a lot of these folks over, got them their H-1 visas, sponsored them, and put them in there. And like I say, even of the 400 people that they grabbed, that they took, I think they kept 4 of them. And so you're thinking, okay, I understand your perspective in terms of why can't Americans fill those jobs. I understand that. But if you read the article, it basically says that they were having a very hard time filling positions with the people that had the skill set that they needed for these particular, for this implementation.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I mean, if they had put a want ad in the New York Times or the LA Times or anywhere, or they did even a television commercial in the area saying, we have 400 jobs available. I could imagine there were 400 Americans that had the skill sets to do what those 400 people did.
Again, I don't know enough to know if that's true or not. It does seem very top heavy in terms of H-1B visa people that they brought in to do these jobs. I'll agree with that. And again, in terms of the actual specifics and the particulars of what they were trying to accomplish there, I really don't know about it. I think we'll learn more in the coming weeks.
I hope we do, because...
Oh, no, we will. I think we will. And I also believe that there is a lot of grassroots feelings of people saying the whole idea of demonizing immigrants is just not popular. People just are fighting against it because you have, especially here in California, we have so many wonderful immigrants from so many places that own restaurants and, all these different types of businesses that have made themselves absolute stalwarts in their community and things that they do and help people and do things. And to now, again, live in fear because of what might happen because they came here 48 years ago and they were only 4 years old. I mean, these are the kinds of things that, again, I think our elected officials have really let all of us down by not having a substantive immigration reform. I mean, they really have just been kicking this can down the road for years and years because it's too much of a conflagration when it comes to being able to run for office. It's a great thing to complain about. It's a great thing to point fingers at. But now you've got real people stuck in real difficult areas. And the letdown has been from both sides of the aisle, both types of presidents. No one has really stepped up and says, okay, we're going to have some substantive immigration reform. And a lot of it is because you've got all these companies that some do, a lot don't, but a lot do exploit the immigrant worker. They don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to pay payroll taxes. They don't have to pay medical benefits. They don't have to pay. So if they can bring these folks in and pay them cash under the table or an hourly that is half of what they would have to pay someone else, whether it's a meat packing plant in Iowa or, someplace here in California, it doesn't matter what it is or where it is. And there's always been this undertow, this secret idea of we really don't want it, because as soon as you identify who these folks are and then you put them on the rolls, then you got to pay payroll taxes, then you got to pay. But the fact is that those taxes should be going into the system. They should be paying their fair share of taxes too, not just sales tax when they buy things, but paying their income tax. And they should be able to take advantage of all the things that are in this country, especially if, again, as we were talking about, they're working hard, they're doing good things, they're a good part of the community. They need to be part of the system. And again, we have all as Americans been let down by the inability of our elected officials to really solve this problem. Now, on one hand, you've got folks who just want to let everybody in all the time, which is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, you're not letting anybody in. I mean, these are not ideas that are going to work in the long term. They're not in the best interest of Americans. They're in the best interest of America. And I'll be the first one to say, this is not an easy problem to solve. This is very complex with lots of layers, lots of people. You have states' rights, you have federal rights, who's responsible. It is an absolute conundrum beyond belief. But we have to start chipping away at it, because if we don't, this type of, harsh boot coming down and just randomly rounding people up, and it becomes extremely concerning from a citizenry perspective, that it could happen to anybody. If it can happen to them, it can happen to me. And if it can happen to us, then, where do we stand? What do we do? And so there needs to be a process in place so we can stand this stuff down and really get to the root of the matter, which is finding the best people, giving them a path to citizenship that doesn't take decades, and getting rid of the folks, like you say, the bad agents who should not be here. Get them out.
Though, it does happen to us in other countries. I mean,
yeah,
we don't get H-1 visas to do things. We have to have lots of documentation to get a job in another country. And there's other countries out there that, if you want to work, you have to do certain things and so on and so forth. H-1 visas in this country, if you say that this gentleman is, or this woman is a scientist or an engineer, she better or he better be doing scientific or engineering work. If he gets an H-1 visa and, fill a job and he's a janitor or he's putting parts together or something like that, it may raise some red flags, and then people will say, hey, listen, you know what? Yeah, I don't care if you got an H-1 visa. You're not really doing what you said you would do. And I put that fault on the companies and the subcontractors that round up these people, because they're getting a cut. Somebody's making money off of these people, bringing them in and getting an H-1 visa for 400 jobs. It's not like nobody, just 400 people in Korea. Where did you grab them from?
Well, the H-1B visa program is designed for people to come into this country that have a specific skill set that can't be filled in the area where the job is supposed to be located. Now, we may find out later that every one of these 400 people were specifically trained in South Korea to work in that plant to build those batteries for those two specific companies and the project that they were doing together. We don't know yet. We'll find out. However, the ability to say that there isn't enough people that have those same skill sets that weren't trained, that, like, say, they could have trained people here for those jobs potentially. So again, we're back to what is the most expeditious way to build what I want to build. If you're a business owner, do I take people who I train myself and bring them in here and sponsor them on the visa program, or do I pay people under the table because they're going to work for me and I don't have to pay payroll taxes and I have to pay benefits? I could do that. Or do the issue of how American business uses the illegal immigration and illegal immigrants, or undocumented immigrants, however you'd like to say it. One of the problems, again, because it hasn't been addressed with the proper process amendment that we need to get immigration so that it's actually positive and manageable and something that we can build on. And the thing that's nice about that is, again, the complexity of the problem is incredibly significant just from a process perspective. But once it's done right and it can be managed, and people get driver's licenses and driver's insurance, and they get it, all that stuff starts to happen, all of a sudden it becomes much more manageable, so that people can understand where the benefits are, where the liabilities are, where the pockets of problems are, this is where it becomes, again, if you can't manage it, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And we just aren't measuring it at all. All we talk about is how many come over the border during, the Biden presidency, or how many are not coming over during Trump's presidency.
Well, that's the political side of it, which also annoys me, because they've politicized it in such a way that they demonize it.
Well, that's just it.
There's one thing I have to tell you this. We need immigration reform because we do need immigrants. every country needs immigrants. It's one way of not only building another culture and melding the cultures that we have and getting people acclimated to be citizens, but it's also a way to build our workforce so that they are responsible, tax-paying citizens of the country. Now, that's very important, and we need that. Because for one thing, people are not having babies and families like they used to. We need to have more people come to this country just to support that part of it. But it has to be brought to a level playing field where it's manageable. And right now, that's part of what they're trying to do is get rid of all the bad actors and say, listen, if you want to be a citizen, yes, there's going to be a way, but they haven't even taken the time. And I'm talking about, yes, both sides of the aisle and other presidencies and this presidency haven't taken the time to say, okay, listen, guys, we have to really focus on what we need to do and how to do it in a way that makes it a lot easier for people to do it at the same time as get the right people to do it, and then take the other piece of the puzzle out. Yes. Because this is something that's always happened with immigration. It's happened way back when we were building the railroad and steel and the skyscrapers in New York and Los Angeles. Who was doing the work? Who was taking the chances? On the people that were working on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, there were people that working in the mines, working in so many different aspects in agriculture that were taken advantage of, but at the same time you're not the kind of person we should have in our community. And that's not right. We have to look at people and say, listen, you have self-worth, you have value, you're a person that wants to do good, raise your family. Because I think a lot of people want to just live a good life and be part of it, but we have to get everything in line.
Well, if you look at the paradigm of immigration, most immigrants leave someplace because it's just untenable. Their situation it cannot be maintained. They need to have a better life. They want to have a family. There are no jobs. It can be, there's so many reasons. They're the wrong religion, or there's too much crime, it can be so many different things. Even if you look at Europe, the amount of immigrants, especially from, the war-torn Middle East, that go into all the Western European countries, even some of the Eastern European countries, they're dealing with that issue now, big time. A lot of, the UK right now, I have so many friends there that talk about how the immigration, how they, again, very similar to the last administration in the US, they were just letting as many people in. They really weren't checking them. They really weren't. And now it's to a point where, can't be managed because it wasn't measured. So a lot of other countries are in a very similar situation that we are. Ours is compounded because we have actual land boundaries north and south that people can just come over. But again, people want to be in America. This is where people want to be. This is where you can start with nothing and make something. This is where, we are a land of immigrants. Unless you're a Native American, you're from somewhere else. And that's how this country was built. And that's one of the things that makes it great. Now, I make a very salient point that, throughout our history, we have utilized some of the immigrants like disposable parts, like the Chinese building the railroad. You're right. That was a horrible thing. And all the other things that have somehow happened in our history. But again, that is not unique to us. Most cultures have, horrible. So putting that aside, the issue becomes all these folks are leaving someplace that is just unsustainable for their lives, for their dreams, for their families, that they need to go somewhere else. So why is it so bad there? So one of the things that people talk about, especially, in ivory towers and things, and they talk about how, one of the big issues is colonizers versus people who are in the colony. And it is very, very difficult to try to make substantive positive changes from countries that people are coming from. Because again, if it's that bad for them, trying to make changes from so far away becomes very, very difficult. It's an extremely complex problem. So they come here, but we don't know how to best serve them because we don't have the process to best serve them. And serving them best, serving our citizenry as best as well. So it becomes this whole diminishing returns thing. The folks who are coming from these countries have nothing to lose. So they're here, or they go to the UK, or they go to Paris, they go to France, they go to Italy. Italy takes in so many from North Africa. They come over in these boats and they tip over in the Mediterranean. It's horrible. So how do we get to a point where each individual country can have a process where they can say, look, we understand why you want to be here. We get what you want to do, but it has to be process managed. And it is just, the complexities are mind-boggling. But it has to happen. And I'd like to say this. Another negative that occurs when this has not been handled properly is that when folks come through the system and they get to the country that they want to be to, they usually find other groups of their own ethnicity that have also come, right? So you have pockets of Syrians, you have pockets of people from Michoacan, you have pockets, I mean, depending on what country you're going into, and then those neighborhoods, they grow, so they maintain a very strong link to their original culture, which is a wonderful thing, which is why you get great restaurants. But in the old days, when our ancestors came over from Italy and France and wherever, they came to America and they worked very hard. They came through Ellis Island or Cleveland, or wherever they came from. They assimilated into the system and were proud to become Americans. I mean, they were still very proud Frenchmen. They were still very proud Italians and happy to be so, but they were also really excited to be Americans. We've lost some of that. And we've lost some of the folks who want to keep their pride in their history and their ethnicity, but want to be, Englishmen, that want to be Frenchmen, that want to be American, because we don't give them the capability to understand why that's a cool thing, because we don't do anything. They just come in and they get into their neighborhood cultures and they're, where they're all, and they just kind of resort to what they know versus trying to assimilate. I think assimilation into a new culture is much more difficult than it used to be, primarily because of, again, the ability of the proliferation of information everywhere, so you can stay connected and do whatever you want to do. But the real benefit of assimilation appears to be disappearing, because what is the benefit? If I try to assimilate, you're going to kick me out. So why should I assimilate? So we've gotten to this place, again, of diminishing returns. And I wish I had an answer. I don't. I think that there's a lot of things that have to come together for a lot of this to change. But we have to start chipping away at it. We have to start, embracing these changes, because if we don't, we're going to have a bunch of disparate groups in all these different countries that are going to be, constantly butting heads, and you're going to have, folks rounding up people and sending them wherever they're going to send them back to. That's no way for a government to work. It's no way for people to live. It's no way for any country to continue to develop its resources, specifically its people, so that it can best serve itself. There's things that need to be done.
So here's an idea. Here's an idea. I'm going to propose an idea, and
let's have it.
You think about this. Okay, so we've had these cabinets. Doge is one of them. Why can't we create a group that would try to create the world's leader in immigration reform? Be the model. Look at all the different things that need to be done. Get professionals from all different parts of the fields. Just like we have technical groups that, we're looking at technology, or we're looking at energy, or we're looking at housing. Why can't we have something that is like a major group of people, think tanks, ideas, that start to work on the problem and come up with different solutions and start testing some of these ideas out and working with communities and coming up with ways of providing a simulation, ways of providing job skills, ways of providing housing, all these things that I think that are part of it. I know it's going to take money, but we're spending money anyways with fighting it. I mean, look at the dollars just to build the wall. And I'm in favor of the wall. I think it's a good thing that we need to get people saying, hey, listen, if you want to cross in, you have to be orderly and coming through an area, just like we did with Ellis Island and so on and so forth. There has to be a process. But then there also has to be a process of, and I think we can be a leader, just like we want to be a leader in technology. We want to be a leader in artificial intelligence. We want to be a leader in energy. We want to do these things, and I think it's possible. But we have to get people together and agree that this is that important and that maybe we could be something that other countries could follow, or let's look at other countries and what is working for other countries and maybe adapt some of those things to us. I mean, this is a big world, and that's the problem that we have. And you hit the nail on the head. Information for these people happens so fast, and they have the ability on the internet to speak their own language and talk to their own people, and they don't need to assimilate. They don't, if they don't want to. They can continue to do exactly what they're doing, which is different when my grandparents, my great-grandparents, used to talk about the French side. We would talk about the Russian-Ukrainian side. That's another part of my family. My mom was Ukrainian. Okay, and my grandparents, when they came over, they came through Ellis Island. They worked very hard trying to adapt. They had to learn the language. Even to the day that my great-grandparents passed away, they didn't speak English all that well, but they understood. But they still didn't do an amazing job opportunities that would have come to like their children and their grandchildren, because it just didn't happen for them.
Right.
Now it's so much different. When people come from another country to this country, they may have some education and job skills that they came from. They should be able to use some of those things. Not like say, oh, well, you were a doctor or something else, or a dentist in another country. Well, you have to pass through all these different things, which I understand. Yeah, they should be able, but they should be able to do it in a way that says, hey, you know what? We value your skill set. If you are a special factory worker, or you could do certain things that need to be adapted to the factories of the United States, they should have that support to do that and assimilate and be able to do that stuff. If we came up with this mentality that, hey, if we want to be a leader, let's be a leader in immigration reform.
Well, I mean, of course, I agree 100%. And there are challenges there. So the skeptic in me, even though he's, you know me, I'm incredibly positive. I mean, I'm not a particularly skeptic, but the reason we're a leader in technology and transportation and energy is because there's money in it. You make an investment, you're going to make a return on your investment. To have that type of an effort and that type of energy go into this particular problem would have to be something that would be at the university level, because private industry would not want to do it because they're not going to make money on it. And quite frankly, in many instances, it's not in their best interest.
But we do some of this, Bobby. We used to do this. There used to be trade schools that people went to.
That's right.
If you wanted to work in a factory, there was trade schools that taught you certain things.
Kaner Tech
in Waterbury, Connecticut. Perfect example. And there was many tech schools all over the country. But what I'm saying is there is a way to do it. And I think there is a return on investment. I think there is a return on it.
No, well, here's the thing. Just to follow on to what I was saying about the skeptic part of me. The fact is that we are getting to a point where a vast majority of Americans want to see reform. And that's, I believe, how it will start. People have said, look, we've had enough. You can't just keep rounding people up and, round up the usual suspects and throw them up. We can't do that anymore. That's not what America's about. It's not who we are. It's not what we've been. I mean, we're the country that everybody wants, in many ways to be like. We're the country that's, in some instances is the shining star that says, hey, you go there, you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And I think people are finally getting to the point where we should take it upon ourselves to have a process where these kinds of things don't happen here. These things where you round up people and throw them in jail, they happen in other countries. They don't happen here. Well, now they're happening here. And again, it's getting to a point where the mismanagement of resources and the inability to understand the human perspective, the humanness of this issue is finally getting to the point where every single American is going, that's it. Enough of this. Let's put our best on it, our best and brightest on it. Let's come up with a solution. And you're absolutely right. There needs to be a subset of some type of community, whether it's the educational institutions, whether it's the Fortune 500. I mean, right now, all those folks, they're in love with AI. Everybody's doing AI. Everybody's investing in AI. Because they see this as the big money maker. They see this, the way they talk about it now, the fear mongering and everything else. It is just the topic of investment. It's the topic of socialization. It's the topic of technology. And we're losing the humanity. We're losing the humanness of it. We're losing, look, if you want to build me a robot that's going to clean my house so that I can go play golf, I love it. But the fact is that I don't want you taking away jobs from people. I don't want you to take away entry-level jobs from college graduates. That doesn't solve any problems. It causes more problems than it solves. And it becomes extremely inhuman, like scooping people off of the street. Like, we have to get away from this. We have to get back to intellectually caring, having processes that work, having workflows that work, and making sure that we're utilizing all of our resources to the best of our ability to make what we believe could be, our great country. And other countries too, they're having the same issues that we have. I mean, everyone's talking to everybody about everything. And we all know that we have the same problems. We all know there's a lot of people coming from other countries for all kinds of reasons, good and bad. And we need to get our arms around it. And there is no particular group, like you say, that has said, you know what, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve it, because everyone's like, it's too difficult to solve. So, well, we're finally at a point where even if it is too difficult to solve, we have to solve it.
It has to be solved, and I agree with you. And we're not solving it. We just have our own opinions, and we have our thoughts. And I think some of that is valid. And the artificial intelligence, let's start talking just a little bit
about AI. Sure.
Right. Let's talk about this for a second. Okay. In regarding artificial intelligence, you stated about robots. Now, there was a big robot like Olympics that just happened in China. Okay. The Chinese just had a big CO with 20 other countries, with meetings with Putin,
Modi from
North Korea, and all that. They are looking at ways of becoming very big global powers, and they will be a threat. China wants Taiwan.
Well, I think you're thinking too small. I think China is the threat. I mean, Putin, they're out of money, they're out of people. The Soviet Union is not a threat. China is the threat. China is the threat for a couple different reasons. Philosophically, they are all about, owning everything, being state-run. The reason that they can make such leaps and bounds in technology is because they own the tech companies, they own all their technology, they own all the resources inside their country. Their government runs that thing their way, and their whole, their objective is to have everything run through China. They and how they do it. They don't care. Again, you talk about not having any respect for humanity and paying people, and the Uyghurs, remember them? The Uyghurs, I mean, all these folks, they don't care. They will run you over. They'll do whatever they need to do to get to their objective. And it is absolutely concerning beyond belief that we've shared so much tech with them, that Apple shared so much process improvement with them, that we've worked with them under the auspices of, well, if we keep them close, that potentially we'll have a better eyes on where they're going. We have been, in many ways, in my opinion, unbelievably naive with China. They want to run everything. They want to rule the world. They want to make sure that they're number one. And they don't care how they do it. And here we are, their students come over here and we teach their best and brightest. And I mean, some want to stay, a lot go back, and, their whole idea is they want to rule the world. And I mean, you just saw their huge military parades and their, all their exercises. I mean, these folks, they are on the 1,000-year plan. They plan, for where they want to be in 250 years is they want to rule the world, and they want to do it their way, and they want the government to run everything. They want it to be the socialist communist mecca. And if we don't get our act together, if we don't start to understand that this is an existential threat to humanity on the planet, we're going to have a problem. And the interesting thing is, you don't see a bunch of folks trying to break into China, but they don't have an immigration problem. And because they'll shoot you. Bang, dead. Throw them in the ocean. They have no compunction, no morality for that kind of thing, nothing.
Or they'll put you in a concentration camp.
Well, they'll just kill you. I mean, it's over. They don't care. If you're not part of the government, you're against them, right? If you come from somewhere and they don't want you, you're done. And the issue, it becomes very, very apparent when you look at, for instance, if you look at, all the consternation over what chips they're going to be getting, and if NVIDIA is going to sell there, and that now that they have their own internal chip manufacturing, which they learned from us, all these things that we've done to try to make them a partner has in fact given them the ability to be independent and continue to grow on their philosophy of we want to rule the world.
And all the they've done, gathering they've done, and all the other countries that they've.
There was another article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about one of the folks who was in the president's foreign service who sent out this email saying, "Hey, we really want your input on these data points for the negotiation," and it was from China. And they're trying to pull information. And again, people need to understand that folks who are playing playing these roles are playing for keeps. They want it. They want to own it. They want they want the West to completely collapse, and they want to be able to do and say and take over all these, then be advantageous in how they do it. So we're going to see, so we get back to all these complex issues and how we're handling them. It takes a lot of effort and thinking, and we do need the best and the brightest that we have to work on these things. But the thing on China, I think, has really hit a tipping point where I think people are really finally starting to understand that they're not interested in being an ally of ours. They're not interested in co-development. They're interested in running the world. And I think that's really starting to come through now. And some of the other European countries are starting to figure it out too, because if you have a meeting and you do military exercises with North Korea, Russia, and India, well, guess what, folks? That's not really that hard to figure out. Okay, I mean, you don't have to be a college graduate to figure that stuff out. So I think people are starting to figure out we really need to kind of get our stuff together, regroup, talk to our allies in Western Europe, get this thing put together, and start to say, no, we're not going to send you technology. No, we're not going to educate all your folks. No, you're on your own now, right? I mean, we don't want to be that severe potentially, but
I don't know about that. I mean, they've got a lot of information already that they don't really, in many ways. I mean, that they can do so much.
Well, as you say, at the point you made previously, if they are constantly bombarding us with ways to hack us, virus ways to. I mean, if they're constantly coming after us with that stuff, friends don't do that. Allies don't do that.
And on every single American.
Right. Exactly.
Just think. Another country knows everything about you, knows everything about me. And I'm nobody, right? Really. Okay.
No, I understand. How is that in any way okay? It's not. And I'm not saying that our government doesn't do that stuff too. We know
that's where it came from. Some of that is because our government knows where, like, every single household that may have a handgun, or legally, not illegally, every household that has a hunting license, every household that has a driver's license, a security number that is paying income tax into this country, and what everybody's making, where they work, what they did, everything that they've done in their whole lifetime is available.
Well, and that's true of everyone at this point almost. Exactly. I think that how that information is used is the important thing. I'd like to think that our government uses our information to help protect us. I mean, with some of the stuff that's happened recently with Doge and uploading information and everything, it is concerning, but I believe they'll get to the bottom of that. But I don't think we have a concentrated government effort to find out all the information on all the other citizens around the world the way that China. I say the Chinese are, the way that they're trying to find out, the way that they're bombarding us with all kinds of electronic missives to pull information or to steal money or to take advantage of people. I mean, I just don't think that we do it, certainly not at the level that they're doing it.
And just imagine if our government had every piece of information on everybody in Russia, everybody in China, or everybody in North Korea.
Well, I think they have selective information on the people they want to have, but I don't believe that the benefit of having all that information outweighs the effort. Whereas in China, they believe the effort and the benefit are the same. And I'm concerned that their ability as a communist autocratic dictatorship, where one guy says something and everybody says okay, versus here where we have independence of thought and the ability to live the life we want to live and believe what we want to believe. I mean, those disparate philosophies tend to lead to different pockets of beliefs, different pockets of philosophies, which is wonderful, which is what makes America great. Whereas if you have a country where the government controls all the business, all the education, all the people, the army, everything, and they say it all, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they become an economic powerhouse because they can pay their people pennies on the dollar and be uber competitive, selling goods and services all around the world at a fraction of what everybody else charges because they pay their folks a living wage, and it goes on and on and on. That type of growth, that type of an economic movement, all of a sudden puts the rest of the world at a disadvantage. And that, I think, is what's beginning to really come through. That's why the president wanted to put big tariffs on China, because we have gotten just obliterated our, in terms of our trade surplus and deficits with them and some other countries too. But again, they're not doing it to make money. They're doing it to dominate. The government makes money, but they're doing it to dominate the world market because they want everyone dependent on them so that they can tell them what to do, so that they can take over other businesses and other cultures and say, this is the way we're doing it. And that type of autocracy, I am not at all in favor of that. I just think it's the wrong way. I don't think it is the worst potential paradigm to serve mankind from my perspective. It really is. And it's concerning. It's concerning. So we'll see. I mean, it's all unfolding right in front of us, buddy. We're watching it in real time.
That's the amazing thing, is we are actually watching it in real time, and we're seeing what's going to unfold, and we have to all be concerned.
Well, I think we need to be diligent. I think it's important that we do our homework, that we know who to vote for, that we decide what our priorities are going to be. We need to tell our elected leaders what our priorities need to be and what they need to work on, and instead of them pontificating upon us what the morality of the day is. We have real problems, and they need to be solved. And I think that I'm hopeful that some of these younger folks coming up through the system are more in tune. I talk to my two sons, right? They're in their mid-20s, and they have such a different perspective on the world than I ever had, in terms of just a much more global perspective on how we can help more people do more things, how we can take the good from what we do and the good from what Italy does and the good from some of these other countries, what they do and how we put it together, how, we need to come up with, a better solution for medical services and coverage here in the U.S., how that paradigm needs to shift, and how it just, their perspective on taking care of the planet and taking care of each other and moving forward with positive intention and putting humanity first, not profits, not artificial intelligence, not a race to space, not, but actually serving humanity is very heartwarming to me, because a lot of these young people that my sons hang around with and that I talk to, they're all the same. They all have this same altruistic heartbeat that says, look, we can do a better job of being human. And I think they're right. We were always so busy trying to make our fortunes and stuff. These kids, they understand the value of a dollar, but they also understand the value of a person. And I think that we're going to see, I am very hopeful that we're going to see some great things from these young folks.
Well, I'm hoping. I'm hoping that, because I think there's pockets there of young people that have the thoughts and beliefs and the values that look at sustainability in this earth and this country and the people in this world. But there's also a lot of people out there that are happy to be where they are, and they don't want to get involved. They don't want to do things. They want to just live their lives and say, hey, listen, stop bothering me. I'm not part of that. I don't want to be involved with that. I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I don't feel that way. But good luck to you, and just don't bother me.
Well, I don't know. A lot of these young folks have this level of authenticity that they're trying to achieve. They really understand much better than you and I ever do on a lot of the social media postings that's just fake. That's not their vote. They understand that stuff. So a lot of that has also kind of peaked, that people are finally going, you know what, this is just baloney. I'm not looking at this anymore. A lot of these young people want to solve real problems. They want to get in the game. They're like, look, enough of this craziness of, reality TV and all this crap that you see on Instagram and all the other stuff that they do, whatever. They're like, no, we get that that's all phony. We get that it's meaningless. We get that it's shallow. They want to tackle the big problems. And I think that's wonderful. And I think we should, listen to a lot of them. I wonder about, I was reading about this young woman from Stanford now who's considered the Greta Thunberg of AI, who's putting together all these things about, we need to just say no. We just say no. We don't want it. We're not interested in it. We are going to hire kids out of college. We're not going to use AI. We're going to build our companies with good people. We want personnel. And I'm thinking, good for her. Hopefully there's 100 more just like her at every major college university in the country. So, hey, did you read my letter in the Wall Street Journal?
I did. I'm very proud of you.
Speaking of college, right?
That was wonderful. And you know what's is nice about that is you had a mentor.
Yes.
A real mensch, a super mensch, person that believed in you as much as you believed in them.
Well, he believed in all of us. That's the thing. Professor McClure at Syracuse, when we went into his class, the very first day, he talked to every single person in that first hour, 202 of us, maybe more in that class. And then he remembered every single one of our names from then on, the whole semester. He remembered us. And that blew me away. But then to actually get to know every single person, and he was so motivating from his actual love of the Constitution, his political science teacher, love of our, how we melded the British and the French systems, how we, the Bill of Rights and all this stuff that I learned from him. He was just so excited to teach us about it and almost like he wanted us to learn it so that we could say it back to him. I mean, it was a wonderful thing. So when he wrote into the Wall Street Journal and said, hey, you should have high expectations for your students. You should push them. They shouldn't all just get A's. And I was like, boy, I could, in my mind's eye, I could see him in that pulpit at Syracuse giving that speech. And I was like, oh man, I have to write it. I just have to say, hey, he had a major impact for me. I've done some pretty nice things in my life. I've been very fortunate. And this guy's a big reason. And when it was funny because I'll tell a quick story. So I had, again, another day like today where I started on the phone at 6 a.m, again, being on the West Coast, 9 o'clock on the East Coast. And I was on calls until about, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And then all of a sudden I start getting these emails on my LinkedIn and on my regular email accounts and like, hey, really liked your letter. Hey, congratulations. I felt the same way. I'd say, hey, really liked your letter. I'm thinking, what the heck are these people talking about? And then finally somebody, one of the emails said, hey, saw your letter in the Wall Street Journal. So I had to stop what I was doing. I ran downstairs. Kimberly, my wife, she was at the table. I'm like, the Wall Street Journal to the letter section. There it was.
And you know what? We talked about this in our last, about taking the time and writing a letter.
Yes.
Okay. And having somebody read it and see the value in what you had to say. And when I read that, I said, see that?
Yeah.
It's true in many ways. Even writing to the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, New York Post, LA Times, Miami Herald,
whatever,
Hartford Current, anything. Take the time, write. When you read something and you have an opinion or you want to praise somebody, you should do it. But that professor, when he talked to the audience of the newspaper and basically said, you know what? Wake up. Wake up. You need to understand that there are students out there that really want to learn. And if you're a good teacher, you can spur imagination, innovation, and curiosity that will then multiply. Look what you've done with your life. And then to take the time to praise him and thank him for what he did because it affected you. And how this one teacher, and there's probably others too,
sure,
you can think of, high school and college professors,
yep,
school teachers, college professors, and people in your lives, that have an effect on you, and thanking them for that, but at the same time is knowing that their value had value on you.
Well, not only that, but the teachers and instructors. I mean, I could go on. Like I said, Professor McClure, Mr. Wynn at Taft. He was my wrestling coach, my history teacher. He was the one that told me to go to Syracuse. He said I'd love it. I mean, he was wonderful to me. But one of the things that I found very, very interesting about Professor McClure's letter in the journal was that day or subsequent day, there was a very interesting article in the journal about how grade inflation has basically overtaken the Ivy League schools. And I may be getting this wrong, but like 80% of the kids that go to like Harvard and Yale, it was Yale, I think, get an A or an A minus in every class because of grade inflation. And I think to myself, back in those days in prep school and in college, that sometimes I had to work so much harder for a C than I had to do for an A. And that I remember the C because I worked my ass off to try to get it because I had to learn so much and it was so difficult. But I was proud of that. Now these kids, their expectation is if I go to an Ivy League, I get A's and then I can go to graduate school. And honestly, Marcel, we are not doing these kids any favors doing that. I mean, how do you know how good you can be? How do you know how strong you can be? How intellectually you can stretch yourself if you're not tested? If you're not pushed, if you're being told, look, you're just not doing the work. I see you. I think you have so much more potential. I believe that your intellectual curiosity is not being subsequently challenged because you're just not putting the effort in. So I'm giving you a C instead of, oh, you're in Yale, so you get. That's not how it's supposed to be. The most challenging educational institutions should be the most challenging institutions. They should be pushing you harder. They should be getting more out of you so that when you get into the workforce or you get into the government or whatever it is that whatever vocation that you get into, that you understand critical thinking, problem solving, hard work, and that you need to look at things at different. So for me, it seems like we've gone in the opposite direction. It's getting into these higher Ivy League schools or the Stanfords and all the other ones, the MITs, getting in, all of a sudden you're guaranteed a great GPA because you got in because you did great or whatever. I think it should be harder. You should be pushed even more because you have to understand that that's what it takes to really break through, not just to have a degree and say, okay, I'm going to make, 1.2 million a year coming out of college because I'm a Harvard grad or whatever. I mean, that's not helping either. Well, we have taken away how we can really honor humanity and how we can be the best people we can be by getting away from the work that needs to go in and the imaginative types of thinking that are going to be required for these new age problems. And people say, oh, that's why we have AI. No, it's artificial intelligence. It's not why we have AI. AI will do some wonderful things. And yes, there's things to be afraid of. And yes, we should definitely keep our eye on it, but it's not a replacement for humans. It's not designed. It shouldn't be designed to be a replacement. It shouldn't be designed, to replace intellectual thought and curiosity. It should be a tool to actually help those things, not replace them. And that's where we need to get to. And I just, it's all this huge ball of confusion right now, this discussion about everything that's going on, but there does seem to be some legs underneath what needs to occur. And like I said, the young people are the ones that seem to have a better handle on it in some ways than others. So I guess we'll see. I mean, like I said, we're in the middle of it. We get to watch it.
Again, I'm glad we circled back about the artificial intelligence because I'm in agreement with you too. And it also can't be a shortcut. Can't be used as a shortcut. I mean, you have to spend the time and really know your subject matter and not just say, oh, I'll just prompt the ChatGPT and, I'll pull out the paper and, oh, yeah, okay, I can rewrite it a little bit so it doesn't look like it's ChatGPT, but, I'm going to get an A out of it. And I walk away not really knowing and understanding and getting the critical thinking part of life and anything else that needs to be associated with it. Okay, I got the A, I got the class, I passed the class, I got the degree, I got the PhD, and now I think I'm going to get the multi-million-dollar job, and that may not happen because once you get in there and they see that you really can't do or perform, you're a farce, and then what's going to happen then? Or you get to a point where it's, oh no, I'm stuck, I'm over my head, and I got to cram and do some of these things so I don't look like a fool. That could happen too. So
if you get your degree and your information and all that through AI, then you should be able to look in the mirror and go, if I'm doing that, then AI can replace me because everything that I got, everybody else can get to.
Point.
So Kim and I were talking the other day about how we think that card catalogs are going to come back and people are going to go back to the library and they're actually going to do their own research and they're going to, because that's how you become a subject matter expert, folks. You become an SME because you do the work, you read the books, you understand the tech so that you can augment what you know, not replace what you know. So the point is to try to get different perspectives from different authors, from different people, and then put it together and come up with your own fresh type of individual, unique thought, so that this is how we evolve. This is how everything evolves. It's not just plugging in a prompt and getting what everybody else gets. That it's just vanilla. And again, if that's what you're doing, then you add no value. The key is that people need to start to think, how do I intellectually add value? So to do that, you have to do the work, and you don't do the work by doing what everybody else does. And you don't do that by just expecting an A or an A minus because you go to a specific school. You've got to really push. You've got to really understand. You've got to build. You've got to work. All that comes together, and then all of a sudden you become, the person you should be. Then, just from a social perspective, being able to go out there and talk to people and understand their needs and what they want, instead of, like I say, the phoniness or just ask a question. Or no, there's real work that needs to happen. The depth and breadth of your character and then everything else that builds becomes the wonderful part of who people are. And like I say, we're fighting to not lose that. And I hope we just keep fighting.
I think we will. And you know what? I want to tell you, we've coming to the end here with Breakfast with Bob Bova. And, again, Bob, it's so great because we're not here to really solve any questions. We're just looking at our opinions of the world, and maybe we get an opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas with other people and maybe get people to think, a little laugh here and there. I am so honored to have you as a friend. Thank you so much.
Feel the same way. Listen, I look forward to this every month. I really love it.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye with Breakfast with Bob Bova.
Thank you for letting me be part of your day. And until next time, keep noticing what makes life taste a little better. And if you're loving this, don't just sip in silence. Follow us, hit the subscribe button, and pour this into someone else's cup. Share it, spread it. Let's wake the world up together, one daily sip at a time.